Okay, looks like we're live. So welcome everyone to this joint meeting between Appropriations and B&T on SNAP benefits. We're here today because SNAP benefits are expected to abruptly stop on November 1st. In past shutdowns, USDA has used contingency funds to keep this money flowing and feeding families. That reflected a basic American value that feeding people is above politics. Unfortunately, this time around, the Trump administration is making a different choice. Stop on November 1st. In past shutdowns, USDA has used contingency funds to keep this money flowing and feeding families. That reflected a basic American value that feeding people. Hold on 1 second, I'm getting a little feedback. I'm sorry. All right, I'm just going to work through the feedback. As I was saying, this time around, the Trump administration has decided not to use these USDA funds, and that's a shame. And it looks like he wants to try to use, and has even said, sort of human suffering as a leverage against Democrats. And I think that's the first thing that he's really said that is true. Democrats do have a low threshold for human misery, and I think my Republican colleagues in this General Assembly do as well. It's just a shame that Donald Trump does not. But we're not in Congress. We can't control the president of the United States. We can't bring him to the table to negotiate health care and to make him use contingency funds to pay for SNAP benefits. But we can solve what we can solve in Maryland. And here in Maryland, our fiscal house is in order. We balanced our budget this year. We ended fiscal 25 in a surplus, and we have a robust rainy day fund. And I know that DHS will seek reimbursement of these funds once a deal is reached. But even if they aren't able to recoup these funds, I know that we have the money in the rainy day fund to cover this program, at least in the short term. And I think we should be clear that we understand the rainy day fund cannot cover this program into perpetuity. For me, this is not abstract. I, like our governor, was lucky enough to have a mother who shielded me from just how poor we were at times. And I think you don't have to have been poor to know that going hungry creates real hardship, and being poor during the holidays and not having a meal on Thanksgiving creates lasting trauma, particularly in children. So we're here today to explore if there are ways to extend the benefit. And I want to be crystal clear. This committee, this House, and this Speaker believes that we should extend this benefit on a monthly basis for the month of November and potentially into December to get us through the holidays. With that, we'll hear from today Dave Romans from the Department of Legislative Services, who will break down exactly what money is available and what mechanisms we would need to be used. The administration, with their thoughts and ideas on the subject matter. Our great comptroller, who issued a compelling press release last week, sounding the alarm that this will impact not just individuals, but entire economies. And finally, we'll hear from a SNAP recipient. With that, let me turn it over to Chair Gazzone. Sorry about that feedback in the start, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you for allowing us to participate. I'm just going to make a very quick and simple statement. I think what truly makes America great is our compassion for others, our ability to help our neighbors when they need a helping hand. And, there's certainly, I think, within us all, a sense of moral responsibility along those lines. And that is what I really think what makes us great. What is happening at the federal level with the administration, this is not great. It's the farthest thing from great in my mind. And so I'm glad you called this hearing. I'm glad you invited us, Mr. Chair. And I think we need to be about solutions. We've been about solutions all the time. That's what we do in the legislature, which we've done over and over again. And I couldn't agree with you more that we can come up with solutions to make this situation better. And we must, because it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your partnership, and those are great words. Could not agree more. With that, let's figure out how we could do this, and let's get into the numbers with David Romans, Department of Legislative Services. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my screen, I think. All right, so hopefully you can see the screen. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a little background on SNAP, a little update on where things are at the federal level, and then talk about options at the state level and fund balances and so forth. So first off, on the screen, you can see as of August, which is the last month we have data for, there were about 372,000 households in Maryland that were receiving SNAP benefits. That they included 668,000 people. They received in the month of August a benefit totaling $123 million. Those were federally funded benefits. And the average benefit per recipient was about $184. As a little reminder as to who qualifies for SNAP, you have to have an income of 130% of the poverty level or below. For a family of three on an annual basis, that's about $34,700 or less. And the maximum amount that a family of three could receive is $785. That number goes down the higher your income is. So that's sort of for someone who has almost no income, they could get $785. This next chart just shows you the SNAP recipients by age from August. You can see about 40% were under the age of 18. About 20% are 60 or older, and the rest are adults 18 to 59. I would note the state has a state-funded supplemental SNAP benefit for seniors, which is defined as people 60 and older now. What the state does is if you are 60 and older and your federal benefit is less than $50 for the month, we provide an additional supplement to get you to $50. In August, about 29,000 people received that state-funded benefit in Maryland, and they received about $26 a piece. All right, so the status of the issuance of SNAP benefits. So October SNAP benefits were fully funded. Part of the reason for that is states actually obligate the dollars the month before they're paid out to the beneficiaries. So all of the funds were available to states in September, and they were obligated and issued. So now the question is November benefits. On October 10th, USDA directed states to hold their November issuances and not to submit the files to the vendors who handle the transactions. Subsequently, USDA has indicated to states that SNAP benefits will not be paid unless the shutdown ends. And that if states were to choose to pay for the benefits themselves, that the federal government would not reimburse states. Now, there's an issue at contention is at the federal level, there is a SNAP contingency fund, which based on media reports has between $5 and $6 billion in it. Originally, back in September, when USDA put out sort of planning documents for a shutdown, they indicated they would use the contingency funds if necessary during the shutdown. Last Friday, they issued guidance to states saying that they would not be using the contingency fund and seemed to be indicating that they could not use the contingency fund to provide November benefits. It's my understanding that the contingency fund doesn't actually have enough to fund 100% of the benefits that should be paid out, across the country in November, but it has a substantial amount that could provide at least a partial benefit to eligible people. As I think most of you know, Attorney General Brown is part of a lawsuit that was filed yesterday by 25 states, asking for relief that the federal administration be required to use the contingency funds. So that remains up in the air going forward. I was asked about prior shutdowns and SNAP. There have been a lot of federal government shutdowns in recent years, but most of them have just been for like a weekend or a few days. There was only one that went more than a month, and that created a somewhat similar situation. And that was in 2018, December 2018 into February of 2019. Similar to what happened this year, the first month of benefits were issued before the shutdown occurred. So the January of 2019 benefits were available to states to issue before the shutdown started. At that time, the USDA directed states that if it were to get if they were to ask for their issuances before January 20th, they could also pay the February benefits, and Maryland and all the other states did that and were able to provide benefits in that second month, even though the shutdown continued into February and was eventually resolved in that February. So for some reason, the USDA is treating this a little bit differently than what was done back in 2018, 2019. And that's the only period that we're aware of where there was any real shutdown long enough to start impacting the question of whether SNAP benefits would be paid out. All right, so in terms of what can the state do, I think the simplest option if the state wishes to do something is that the governor could declare a state of emergency. In previous administration, Governor Hogan twice declared a state of emergency and used his emergency powers to tap the rainy day fund for various purposes. First time that happened was in 2015, when 20 million was taken from the rainy day fund to respond to the unrest in Baltimore City. Governor Hogan did it again in October 2020, transferring 250 million from the rainy day fund for an economic relief initiative related to COVID and the negative impacts it was having on businesses in the state. So there is precedent for declaring a state of emergency and using that power to access the funds. Absent a state of emergency, there's really no way for the governor to withdraw money from the rainy day fund or use general fund balance without actions by the General Assembly. So this is the simplest way if the governor were looking to act quickly to provide some sort of benefit. Last couple of slides are just about the availability of cash resources in the state. On the general fund side, when you take into account the fiscal 25 closeout and the VRE's revenue revisions that were adopted in September, there's a projected balance at the end of fiscal 26 in the state general fund of 440 million. Now, I want to caution that is before you consider any deficiencies that the administration may propose at the upcoming session. Based on the fiscal 25 closeout, we know that agencies were about 350 million short of the money they needed to pay fiscal 25 bills. So they'll be paying those bills out of fiscal 26 dollars. So there's almost certainly going to be a deficiency to backfill for that 350 million or so. We also, DLS is working on our spending affordability briefing for a couple of weeks from now, and we're expecting significant deficiencies as well to cover fiscal 26 costs. So I think that cash balance will probably be erased by the deficiencies, and there may even be a need to use a little bit of rainy day funding to fund the deficiencies. But as I note on this last slide, the rainy day fund currently has a balance, projected balance for the end of fiscal 26 of a little over $2.2 billion. That's 8.4% of state general fund revenues. If you were to choose, the governor were to choose to fully backfill the SNAP benefits, which would roughly be 123 million for the month of November, that would still leave a balance in the rainy day fund of 2.1 billion. As I said, you're likely going to need some of that to deal with shortfalls in 26, and you may need to use some of it to address fiscal 27 budget challenges, but there certainly is a substantial balance in the fund at this time. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. And just to be clear, it's as simple as the governor just declaring a state of emergency, which I think we'd all agree that 680,000 people losing their food benefits is an emergency. He does that, and then he could tap rainy day fund, which has a $2.1 billion balance. Actually, that's if he did it for November. So, and that would leave us at about 8% rainy day fund.
Correct. That's all.
Just give me some history. Just give me some history really quickly on rainy day fund. I've been here about 27 years. I think traditionally we've been around 5%. That's where we like to be at or above. What's the history of that sort of before the the pandemic, which we know was a huge cash infusion from the federal government.
Yeah, from fiscal 2008 through fiscal 21, with one exception, we were right at or around 5% every year. So there was a long history of being in that 5% threshold. The state has tried very hard not to go below the 5% threshold, but that's been sort of the normal situation. The last few years, we had large balances, and we've been able to maintain something closer to 8% or more.
So if we were to cover this benefit, we would be substantially still above that 5% benefit. We at about 8%. Is that right?
That's correct.
Great. All right. Any questions from House or Senate, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Zucker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Romans. So, I mean, from what I heard Chairman Barnes say and Chairman Gazzoni, so it sounds like the President of the United States could probably unilaterally fix this, given his own authority, even during the shutdown. I think Chairman Barnes eloquently stated that in the absence of leadership, we need to step in, right? Marylanders are counting on it and deserve it. I guess my question is, David, so this is a one Maryland issue, because my understanding is out of the 58% of the people that would benefit, you're talking about 17 to 0 years old and 60 and above. My understanding is about 54,000 of these people that would lose benefits are in the Eastern Shore, and roughly 41,000 people in Western Maryland. So you're talking about roughly 20% of the population of Western Maryland losing benefits. Is that somewhat accurate?
The numbers on the Western Maryland and Eastern Shore SNAP recipients in August are correct. I don't know what percentage of the population that is, but that is correct in terms of those numbers.
Delegate Grist.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, and I think that Senator Zucker is right. I think that at least what it sounds like USDA could potentially do this without, while we still have a shutdown. But I also want to remind members too that we have two senators. If they were to vote for the continuing resolution, we wouldn't be sitting here today. We could actually be doing our other jobs and hopefully paying our own bills. But I guess I have two questions. How much, I mean, are we looking at, what's it, $135 million for each of the 2 months, or is that just total that we have to cover?
So the federal government did provide the funding for the October benefits. So we're all good for October. People received the benefit. The federal government paid for that benefit. So it's November, I think, at the moment. That's the question. Based on the August experience, would be around $123 million if the state were to backfill 100% of the what would normally go out.
And that's for both months to get us through the end of the year, $123 million.
Each 123 each month. So if we did it
Each
in
month,
November
okay.
and December, it'd be close to 250 million.
Okay, and so my next question has to do with the error rate. I know that that there's this mandate now that we have to maintain a certain or be under a certain threshold. Where are we now on that? Because if we don't fall under that threshold, we could potentially lose all of this federal money anyhow.
So our most recent SNAP error rate was a little over 13%. The one big beautiful bill that was passed over the summer by Congress, I believe starting in fiscal 28, I want to say, would impose penalties on states who have the error rate that's high. And Maryland would likely be in the place where we have to pay about 15% of the cost of the benefits, whereas currently they're 100% federally funded.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we go along with this, we want to make sure that we get that error rate down potentially somehow. I don't have any ideas in those regards just yet. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rosapap, who is actually looks like he's Senator iPad right now, but
yeah, it really is Rosapap here. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me just thank Chairman Barnes for your leadership on this. The Trump administration is doing a lot of terrible things to this country, but this falls in the category of one of the most cruel things that they have tried to do. I'm a hawk on protecting the rainy day fund, as members of these committees know. And this clearly is a five-star hurricane for poor people who need food. So I'm totally on board with using rainy day fund dollars to try to deal with this issue. I have one question for David Romans, though. One of your slides had a reference to whether or not when the government reopens and we apply to get repaid by the federal government, we can get repaid. And can you put that slide back up on the screen, or so I get the words right, so I can understand it exactly?
Sure. Let's see. Okay, hopefully you can see it again.
Yeah, there it is. USDA also indicates that current law does not allow states to cover the costs of benefits and subsequently be reimbursed. Do we know what law they're referring to? And if we looked at the law ourselves, will we have a legal case to pursue if we make these advances and then they try not to reimburse us?
Well, all they did is they issued some guidance on Friday that said that they're not going to reimburse states, that there's no provision in federal law that allows them to reimburse states. I think I am not a lawyer, so I will not, and I'm certainly not an expert on federal law, so I can't really speak to whether there's something in federal law that supports that. I would certainly think that if and when the shutdown ends, Congress could, if it wanted to, say, provide clarity in any, to say whether states could be reimbursed or not if a number of states move forward. And there are states that have said they're going to do some sort of, patch for SNAP going forward. So, but I can't speak definitively on the federal law.
Well, thank you for that answer. Very helpful. I think my suggestion would be that we get our Attorney General to opine on that issue related to federal law. And then secondly, if it's in doubt or we need something, we definitely should pursue federal legislation to get the reimbursement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for putting the briefing together, because obviously time is of the essence. And David, thank you for the presentation as always. And that's actually my question. I know obviously November 1st comes up on Saturday, and this isn't just an easy process to get money out the door. So I'm curious, what is sort of the drop dead deadline here? When do we need a decision so that there isn't a gap or there, a lapse? Obviously, our constituents are expecting this money to come in. They're going to be grocery shopping this weekend. When do we need to flip the switch to be able to get the money out and load it onto people's cards so they can actually use it?
So I haven't had a direct conversation with DHS about this, and I don't know if the administration panel later knows the answer to this. But my understanding is that normally the state would already have sent all the information to the vendors, and they would be ready to load this into people's accounts. So I think that any decision is going to be delay. I know even if the state were to decide today it wanted to backfill, I think we would be behind the normal process. So I think there would likely be a delay into some point in November before the benefits are actually issued. I do not know how many days that delay would be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Held.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to both of the chairmen for having this hearing this afternoon. Can you tell me what the process would be if we were in session, David? How would we address this issue if we were to be in session?
I think you could pass an emergency bill, to direct, give the governor authority to, spend money from the rainy day fund or from some other source to support this. But you'd have to do an emergency bill to move fast enough. That's why I think, practically speaking, if the state wants to do something, the governor declaring an emergency is the smoothest. Even during session, that would be the way to do it fastest. Because it's kind of a unique circumstance in terms of having very little time to make a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator King.
Do we know if the governor is willing to do that?
I do not. I will defer to the panel that's coming up later.
Okay.
We're going to hear from our acting budget secretary as well as legislative director in just a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Senator Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for holding this meeting. Assuming that we may be having this conversation again before December, at what point do we need to be concerned about an effect to our bond rating in terms of our ratio for the rainy day fund?
Oh, so I mean, so if we used the 123 million, again, we'd be very close to 8%. I think the rating agencies have certainly have a preference for the state having more money in the rainy day fund than less. So I don't think that the 123 million alone is going to be a tipping point. I think, you know, it gets into more of the longer term budget challenges the state has and how we address those challenges and maintain some sort of balance. So it's kind of a broader question, I think, that is bigger than just the 123 million. But certainly the rating agencies have expressed concern about the state having a structural budget challenge, a significant one in the out years, and needing to address that and needing to maintain some reserves.
And just to be clear from my question earlier, we had for about 15 years about 5 or around 5%, and we retained our AAA bond rating during those years.
That's true.
Thank you. Thank you.
Delegate Shetty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Romans, for presenting, as always, such helpful factual information about the state of the situation. And thank you in advance to all of the witnesses who have joined us. I want to take a moment to ask, if I may, with your permission, Mr. Chair, just a series of super short questions. First, Mr. Romans, you noted earlier in response to Delegate Greist, he had questions related to the SNAP error rate. First, can you share a little bit about what the error rate was prior to the Moore administration?
I don't, I am not the SNAP expert on our office.
About 35%. It was about 35%. So thank you. Sorry, I actually knew the question's answer. I'm doing a little bit of a Corman situation here, I suppose. So thankfully, the administration has been able to lower the SNAP error rate. Delegate Grice, I know that's an important issue that all of us share a concern on. Related to the error rate, though, Mr. Romans, isn't it the case that error rate could be defined as either underpayment or overpayment of benefits? So in theory, some of the recipients are actually due higher amount and have not been able to receive it.
Correct. It's just an inaccurate payment amount.
Okay. Thank you. So, and does the error rate actually even have anything to do with what we're talking about right now, though? The fact that 680,000 people will not receive SNAP benefits come November 1st? It's a separate issue, I think, related to
yes,
the
I think that's fair.
HR1
So it's a
impact on our
separate
state
issue,
budget.
longer term issue.
Thank you. And then the last question I have is related to TCA beneficiaries. If you can happen to share, please, some of the most needy families in Maryland rely on SNAP benefits. Those who are unhoused, those who receive TCA benefits, the cutoff of which is $500 a month is their income qualification for TCA. Do you have a sense of how many Marylanders who are receiving SNAP benefits are actually earning less than $500 a month and are enrolled in TCA?
I know that there's more than 40,000 individuals in the TCA program. Anyone who qualifies for TCA, as you've mentioned, would automatically qualify for SNAP. So all 40,000 plus are in both programs.
Got it. And HR1 also had SNAP work requirements, I think, that were implemented earlier than some other components of the bill. TCA does have a work requirement as well. So all of those enrollees are already participating in a work environment, a work program, a training program, et cetera, but and now SNAP has a similar work requirement. So these are individuals who are working Marylanders, unless they fall under specific exemptions, like perhaps if they are a child, or someone who is disabled or a senior. Isn't that right?
Right. There are actually existing SNAP work requirements that have been expanded by the One Big Beautiful Bill. But yes, essentially seniors and children are obviously exempt from the work requirements. And then there's cases like homelessness and disability and so
Sure.
forth that also
Sure.
are exempt.
Okay, and thank you. And my last question is, Mr. Romans, are you aware of what our neighboring states are doing related to this issue?
I know that Virginia, the governor has said that and I think declared a state of emergency and said that they are going to provide some sort of benefits. The last I've seen is they were talking about doing weekly benefits in the month of November, I think with the hope that Congress would eventually resolve the impasse and issue federal benefits. I have not seen any specific news on what any of the other neighboring states are doing.
Okay, and I believe other states across the country, Democratic and Republican-led states, are also funding something, like putting money into food banks, deploying their National Guards to help with food distribution efforts. And in addition to what our Attorney General is doing, suing the federal administration for these benefits, because this is ultimately a federal government responsibility by law. Ideally, we're able to secure the funds needed to provide full benefits to everyone in the state who needs them. So thank you, Mr. Romans, for all of your incredible work and your team's work. Thank you, Mr. Barnes, for Chair Barnes, allowing me the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should have said Subcommittee Chair Shetty. Thanks for your work. I don't see any other questions here, so let's move on to our great comptroller, who's already voiced concerns over what is coming down, and I should say a former member of the Appropriations Committee. Comptroller
Thank
Learman.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Chair Barnes, Chair Gazone, members of the Appropriations Committee and Budget and Tax Committee. It's an honor to be here with you today. I can't say I'm happy to be here because of what is happening, but it is an honor. Today, I have supplied written testimony to all of you, which details more of what I'm going to say today. But I want to focus my comments on the economic importance of SNAP and the challenges that families, our business community, and our state will face if it's not funded. But before I do that, I want to make two quick points. First, I just think it's important to underscore how truly unprecedented this impending deadline is. Dating back to 1980, the federal government in the prior 11 shutdowns has always fulfilled its obligation, and we cannot find any other time since SNAP's creation in the Food Stamp Act of 1964, when the federal government has refused to fulfill its obligation, which I think certainly strengthens our Attorney General's hand. Second, in Maryland, unlike in most states, SNAP is a federal-state partnership. While the vast majority of funds come from USDA, Maryland itself does fund some benefits, as Delegate Shetty knows. In 2016, I passed bipartisan legislation to create a state SNAP supplement for older Marylanders. And then just a couple years ago with Senator Madaleno, just a couple years ago, Senator McCray and Delegate Shetty both lowered the age so that Marylanders age 16 up qualify, and raised the amount from $30 to $50. So older Marylanders should continue to receive that $50, even when the federal government does not provide anything. Indeed, Maryland will actually be paying more through this senior SNAP program than ever before, because it will be mandated to pay the full $50 to every senior, age 60 and plus, not just to those who qualify for less than $50. So over 640,000 Marylanders receive SNAP, and because of the senior SNAP supplement, the brunt of this failure to pay will actually be borne by children and families, because they're the only ones who won't be getting anything. It will also be borne by another group that doesn't get talked about as much, retailers and their employees. So economic research has consistently shown that SNAP delivers one of the highest short-term economic multipliers of any federal program. Every SNAP dollar is spent nearly immediately and then generates additional economic activity as it circulates through our community, supporting jobs, businesses, and tax revenue. When SNAP benefits are cut, economically harmful ripple effects inevitably follow. SNAP has a really important, so just a few points on this. One, SNAP has an important multiplier effect in the national economy and in our state economy. The GDP multiplier for SNAP is 1.5. That means that for every 1 billion in SNAP benefits nationally, we see 1.5 billion increase in GDP. So we know that over 3,800 Maryland grocery stores and food retailers currently accept SNAP benefits. Nationally, that spending supports over 13,000 jobs and generates 32 million in income for farmers as well. So there's an incredibly powerful return that strengthens our communities and our economy. And I should add that the economic activity generates from SNAP generates approximately 289 million in state tax revenue and 333 million in federal tax revenue nationally. My second point is that the business impact of SNAP cuts could be immediate and severe. SNAP benefits flow directly into local businesses, grocery stores, farmers markets, and food retailers across Maryland. When benefits are cut and reduced, those businesses experience immediate sales losses and reduced economic activity. For smaller retailers who are already operating on tight margins because of tariffs and inflation, this money, this couldn't come at a worse time, right? That those SNAP dollars can mean the difference between staying open and closing their doors, between maintaining their workforce and making layoffs. Also, eliminating SNAP will hurt Maryland's most challenged areas the hardest. So Maryland's highest need areas are particularly reliant on the economic benefits of SNAP. For example, let's talk about a county where I was yesterday, Allegheny County, where more than 20% of households rely on SNAP benefits. It has a total of 60 SNAP retailers to serve the county's 15,000 SNAP recipients. Many of these retailers represent significant employers and points of food access for a county that really struggles with economic and food insecurity, and where the United States Census Bureau currently identifies only 16 grocery stores for the whole county. I might also add that these stores and families are still struggling from recovering from floods and were recently denied FEMA funding as well, right? So even families who are not reliant on SNAP benefits could see reduced food access and employment as a result of pulling that money out of this already challenged economy. So this problem, of course, is not isolated to rural Maryland. SNAP serves Maryland's highest need areas with particular effectiveness, and families and retailers in those areas all depend on SNAP's revenue. Our BRE found that 25% of Maryland SNAP recipients live in very high poverty areas, areas of concentrated poverty and high poverty. Suddenly removing SNAP revenues from those already struggling, often neighborhoods that have been struggling for generations, that has cascading consequences that could drive many of those communities further into poverty. Finally, SNAP recipients are among those struggling the most right now. Programs like SNAP are more important now than ever, given where our economy is. The data has been revealing a very troubling bifurcation in our economy, really a K-shaped economy. While higher income consumers are continuing to spend, lower income Marylanders are showing clear signs of financial strain. Their spending just can't keep up with inflation. So there's a real growing divide in recent months as it gets more expensive for Americans to afford basic household goods, but wealthier individuals and families are still benefiting from stock market investments and rising home values. So this is a huge challenge, and these cuts could not come at a worse time. I'm hopeful that in the future, of course, inflation will decrease and lower interest rates will deliver some relief, but that's just not the reality at this exact moment in time. I think that cutting SNAP now will really accelerate the erosion of economic stability for Maryland's most vulnerable families at precisely the moment that they need it the most. So we are in a unique situation in Maryland. Usually SNAP dollars go directly from, or always, SNAP dollars go directly from the federal government to the EBT provider. In our case, that's Conduent for now. And that gets loaded onto the EBT cards. Different families receive them at different times during the month, right? Not everyone is paid on the first of the month. But in Maryland, because of the Senior SNAP program, we are one of very few states where we actually have the technological ability to add money directly to EBT cards. Most other states cannot do that. Therefore, should Maryland choose to fund SNAP for the month of November, it could transfer the funds to the vendor, to Conduent. Indeed, it's already going to be transferring the required $50 a month for those aged 60 and up. I recognize that over the next 3 years, our state and its residents are going to be tested time and time again from federal cuts. And as a state, we simply will not be able to make up for the gaps from the federal funding cuts. From Medicaid to housing benefits to grant funding to disaster relief, right? The needs are going to be never ending, and there will always be a case made for each. Nonetheless, because of its immediate impact on our most vulnerable residents, on businesses that are barely scraping by, on some of our most historically challenged communities, and recognizing the cascading impact of these cuts on Maryland's economy, I do hope that our state will act to extend SNAP benefits for the month of November. And I certainly hope that through legal action, we will recoup that funding. Thank you for calling this hearing, for all the work that you're doing. It's an honor to serve under the leadership and with partners like Governor Moore, Attorney General Brown, and all of you in our General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller. That was really enlightening and I think good information, and particularly the information that we can get it out, maybe not by November 1st if we decided right away, but pretty quickly given the structure of our EBT cards. And thanks for your leadership in standing up and calling for us to do this in the month of November.
Thank you.
Any questions for our Comptroller?
Oh, I'll also add in the appendix to my testimony, what I sent around is an answer to Senator Zucker's question on the percent of households participating in SNAP programs. So just you can take a look at that.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a good day.
Thank you all. Oh.
Mr. Chair, I'm so sorry. May
Oh,
I
sorry.
just ask our comptroller just
Yes.
a question? Thank you. Madam Comptroller, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to have you at the table as we consider all of these serious issues. I also really appreciate in your testimony submitted in advance that you have that percentage breakdown of percentage of population, percentage of SNAP enrollees relative to the population per jurisdiction. I'm wondering if you could just read like the top 5 out for us and what those percentages are. I know, so in Montgomery County, we have a very large population, so we're closer to the middle of that ranking. But we have in our county almost 70,000 enrollees as well. Our population is 1.2 million, so our percentage is relatively low. But I'm wondering if you could just read out those 5, please, and then if you have seen anything, and maybe you're not the appropriate witness for this question, I apologize, anything that the counties are doing that to respond to support their local businesses, food pantry distributions, anything like that you can share, please.
Yes, sure. So the top 5 are Somerset, which is 25% of its population, Baltimore City, 23%, Dorchester, 21%, Allegheny, 21%, Caroline, 17%, Wacomico, 17%. And this is as the latest data that we could find, which was 2022. So it's probably slightly different now, but that gives you a good range.
Thank you.
So the only local jurisdiction that I've seen so far, and this may just be because it's the headline that got delivered to my inbox, was that Baltimore City is planning to put money into food spaces. I think they're going to set aside, about $3 million. Of course, ironically, right, these top jurisdictions that are some of the most impoverished in the state, they're the ones. Somerset, Baltimore City, Dorchester, Allegheny, Caroline, Wacomico, like they're some of the ones that have the least ability to fund SNAP on their own. So it's hard asking them to do this, I think.
I would agree with that. I will also add that in Montgomery County, our county council just yesterday had a press conference and they noted that they're doing 7.75 million to help meet some of the community needs. Some of it is housing assistance, some of it is community partner support, and 3.5 million towards food distribution efforts. But yeah, I mean, I would agree. Montgomery County is in a different financial footing than some of these other smaller jurisdictions with the larger percentage impact. But I think it just, again, makes the case of our federal government needs to step up and provide these resources as they're required to do. Our local jurisdictions are doing what they can, but we have a role to play here in the state too. So thank you, Madam Comptroller, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I should just say, I know that the Prince George's County Executive, I've spoken with her. Aisha Braveboy is formulating a plan to deal with not only the effects of this eventuality, but our federal workers. And so she is hard at work putting a plan together, much like our mayor and our county executive in Montgomery. And I think probably many of our county executives around the state. I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Madam Comptroller. We will now hear from our administration. We have Acting Secretary Weissman and Chief Legislative Officer Baker. I don't know who wants to start first, but whoever does, come on screen here, start talking, and we'll welcome you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Everybody got me?
Mr. Baker, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, sir. Love the glasses. Chair Gazone, Chair Barnes. My name is Jeremy Baker. I'm the Chief Legislative Officer for Governor Wes Moore. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I look forward to your questions. As we know, this shutdown began on October 1st. And it layers, I think important to note, it layers on top of the 15,000 federal jobs lost in Maryland because of the president's administration actions. We continue to call on that federal government to fund SNAP with their contingency funds. We share the General Assembly's commitment to taking care of Marylanders who are in need. October 31st is that deadline for those next SNAP payments. And as we've heard, it takes a little bit of time to get those up and running. The federal government should follow that law, continue to fund SNAP, full stop. This administration's own guidance going into the shutdown was clear that the SNAP contingency funds could be used to prevent a lapse in those benefits. And even the Senate Republican Appropriations Chairwoman has expressed the view that the administration should prevent a cutoff in benefits. As Mr. Romans mentioned, the Attorney General filed suit along with 25 other states plus DC to compel the federal government to fund SNAP by using the contingency fund. I believe that hearing is in Boston. There's a temporary restraining order hearing in Boston set for tomorrow. And we'll know more tomorrow, hopefully, with some kind of ruling on that TRO. Republican governors, including our own, continue to urge this White House publicly and privately to fund SNAP. Based on conversations with Republican governors, many of them last week expected the Trump administration to step up and find a solution either through the use of the contingency fund, transfer authority, or another solution, especially after they did so at the last minute on WIC. While most Republican governors have framed their public statements as calling for an end to the shutdown, we know behind the scenes many of them are also urging the administration to utilize that contingency fund. We don't know what conversations states like Virginia have had with the administration about reimbursements. Many other states are in conversations about how to surge resources to food banks and community partners to mitigate those loss of benefits. We've seen our own counties as well, as we've discussed here and heard here, have stepped up on that front. Just a little bit more background before I turn it over to our acting secretary. We've acted swiftly to support Maryland's federal public servants and provide access to key federal programs. Many of these actions would not have been possible without the groundwork laid by this legislature, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't note it, including housing and utility protections passed in 2019, as well as the federal employee loan program, which was modified in 2025. I want to make sure to thank this legislature for their work and their foresight in providing the administration with the tools to help people. This is not just about funding SNAP, but also about an end to this shutdown by coming up with a bipartisan deal to fund the government and protect Marylanders from crippling health insurance premium increases. I'll give you one quick example, just so we're all on the same page about what's at stake outside of just SNAP, which we know is so critical to Maryland families. We're talking about a $6,000 annual increase in premiums for a family of four. If your adults are similarly aged to me, giving myself a little bit of leeway in the 40s, mid 40s, and are making about $128,000. So a lot at stake, and obviously, more need than we'll be able to handle if we're on our own. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to Acting Secretary Jake Weissman, who is in a trial by fire, obviously coming in hot, and we're so happy and feel so lucky to have him. So thank you, sir.
Yep, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, we'll just take questions for the administration at the end. Is that okay with you? I'm going to take that as a yes. Acting Secretary Weissman, welcome. This is, I think this entire legislature is big fan of Jake Wiseman, and we wish your first hearing before us was under happier circumstances, but we do want to congratulate you and thanks for being with us today.
I appreciate that. Chair Barnes and Chair Gazzoni and members of the committee, thanks for having me. For the record, Jake Weissman, Acting Secretary, Department of Budget and Management. And I do want to say, as a one-week veteran in this position, how much I'm looking forward to working and building a relationship with each of you, and how much I appreciate that we're here having this discussion about how to help Marylanders in need. As the comptroller mentioned, SNAP is paid for by the federal government directly to recipients, as opposed to as a reimbursable expense. Simply put, if the federal government continues down this illegal path and the state decides to take independent action on SNAP, we are not guaranteed a reimbursement. The memo that Mr. Romans mentioned that was issued by USDA on Friday explicitly stated that, quote, there is no provision or allowance under current law for states to cover the cost of benefits and be reimbursed. As you heard from Mr. Romans, the state does have the funds to backfill SNAP funding, but I want to provide you with a larger picture. We're in month 10 of a 4-year term, and we are going to continue to face these kinds of challenges for the next 3 years. I think it's important to remember that this is a shutdown over what is now a 3-week continuing resolution. This is not the only shutdown we could face before the new year, and it's very likely only a sign of things to come. And this isn't like any other shutdown we faced. There are no reimbursement guarantees, and we seem to have federal courts that are unwilling to check the White House's fiscal authority. The conversations we're having within the Moore-Miller administration are broader than SNAP. The Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, is close to running out. WIC may be in danger. There are growing questions about Head Start, and there are real valid concerns as to whether this administration threatens Medicaid funding sometime in the future. That's not to mention the impact of the continued federal actions on our state's economy. Questions and concerns continue to arise daily. And as a state, we are continuing to help folks navigate this crisis, including funding for state employees who are paid with federal dollars. So far, we've spent about $30 million for salary and fringe benefits with no guarantee of reimbursement. Almost 1/3 of these positions are in Department of Human Services, and about 10 to 15% each in MSDE, Department of Health, and Department of Labor. The state funding both ensures the continued employment of these individuals and also ensures that critical services in our state continues. While we maintain slightly under 8.5% in the rainy day funds, as Mr. Romans mentioned, we're also facing over $1 billion shortfall next year. You take all these factors together, it's why this administration is taking a week-by-week iterative approach to this. With all the outstanding questions, we have to move carefully to protect Marylanders. And you'll hear over the next 24 hours some of the actions that the Moore-Miller administration will be taking to look out for Marylanders on this and other critical issues. This isn't an easy message to deliver, and it's definitely not the first message first conversation I wanted to have with your committees. And I think it's important that together we continue to pressure the federal government to do the right thing. I look forward to working with each of you in a collaborative manner to find solutions to help Marylanders together. And Mr. Chairs, really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. And with that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Mr. Weissman. So look, we've heard a lot from you and Mr. Baker about the shortcomings of the federal government. You will get no argument, I don't think, from many of us on these committees with regard to that. The great villain here is clearly Donald Trump, who seems to relish, as I said at the outset, in human suffering. But that doesn't alleviate us of our responsibilities to step in, and we cannot control him. So you've said we're going to hear something in the next 24 hours. You couldn't tell us that today. What's the 24-hour delay?
Deferring to the governor and his announcement.
I think it'll be in keeping, Mr. Chair, with what we've seen other states and localities around our state too.
States like Virginia, who have said that they're going to cover this benefit.
I think we continue to work through how we'll address the SNAP shortfall, sir.
Jake, you've talked a lot about other emergencies or things that could come down the pike. And I think that none of us we all understand the dangers that the Trump administration presents to our state and nation. We're not oblivious to that at all. But, we have rainy day funds now. So you've said, we might have WIC or energy assistance issues coming up. Do you believe those programs to be more valid? Are we saving money for that? Are we, to me, there's nothing more valid than the emergency in front of our nose. And that's, the catastrophe of people going to the store Saturday morning, expecting money on their benefits card and finding out they're not. So could you get into that a little bit? If we're saving the money and we're not going to use the rainy day fund, what are we saving it for? What's the better use? Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, we are exploring both what we have and also the technical means in a variety of different sources. It's not a matter of one need is more urgent or more important than the next. It's a matter of approaching this from a week by week iterative standpoint, right? We want to make sure that we are approaching this and saying, what are the needs in front of us and how do we address them while not committing the state to future liabilities down the line?
Look, you've both been chiefs of staff in the legislature, and I have great affection for both of you. You know that the comments here today are woefully inadequate, and we're not really getting much information, but I guess we'll stay tuned for the next 24 hours. Are there any other questions from the committees? Delegate Geist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No comments, or no questions, but I would like to comment, in regards to any decisions that the Moore administration would make in these regards. But first of all, I want to thank Delegate Shetty for clarifying that error, the error rate. I was not aware that DHS has worked hard to actually get that number reduced, and hopefully those trends continue. I'll make sure that I share that information. I'll also reach out to Secretary Lopez to get more details so I can share it with our colleagues as well. So it may be less a concern than I thought it was originally, at least what I was told. So I want to thank you for that. Also, I just want to just quickly comment. Just this morning, I got a call from our local Head Start folks. And the position that they are in is that they have money to be able to continue their operations through Head Start. The challenge that they have, though, is that their meal service is paid for with SNAP benefits. And so the challenge that they have is, one, they don't have a rainy day fund that they can dip into, unfortunately, but they do have a line of credit that they can use. The problem, if they do that, they have to pay that money back, and if this continues, they won't have the money to pay that back. And so the question herein lies that, do they continue to keep their doors open, knowing that they can't feed the kids, or do they shut down at least temporarily and not provide any Head Start programming? Just because they can't have, provide their food service. So that's real. I mean, obviously the deadline is in just a few days in that regard. So, I mean, these are real impacts to our communities, and they're serious impacts to our communities. And as you all know, on the Appropriations Committee and B&T, this is be my 12th session going in, and the entire time, my entire, career as a delegate has been on Appropriations Committee. And you all know that I'm very fiscally conservative. But I will say, though, as a fiscal conservative, that the rainy day fund should be used for just that. It should be used in a situation where you are the state's in a bad situation, where we need some money to deal with an emergency situation. And, here we are, we're in that situation right now where we need a certain amount of money to fix an emergency situation. And that's what our rainy day fund's for. That's what it's there for. And that's something that I would certainly support using it for. Obviously, we can't sustain this for more than a month or two. And hopefully by then, and I know that we may or may not agree. Well, I know we're not going to agree on, who's at fault here. I'll argue that anybody who is an elected official at the federal level is at fault for this situation, to be quite honest. Fortunately, it seems they're much more dysfunctional than we are, certainly at the state level, but I would support this effort. And I can't speak for our entire caucus, but I think a lot of our membership in the Republican caucus would also support this short-term measure to ensure that that these benefits are still being paid. Because obviously, these are, oftentimes, single working moms, they're folks that have developmental disabilities. These are folks, that are senior citizens and they can't help themselves. That's the majority of the people that take SNAP benefits. And you've heard us say we're concerned about waste, fraud, and abuse. We're worried about people who say they lost their cards and they end up selling them to somebody else, and we replace them. But I think that's a small percentage of the people that take this benefit, and that issue is separate from what's in front of us right now. We got to make sure that the people can't help themselves are still getting these benefits, and we have to make sure that we use any means necessary, which would include using the rainy day fund, which is what it's set. It's there for. So I hope that the Moore administration, hears us clearly, that I think that this is a bipartisan effort to make sure that these folks are taken care of, at least temporarily, until they get their act together at the federal level.
Thank you, Delegate. Thanks for that. Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say that the state of emergency that we're all talking about, I mean, honestly, is 100% manufactured by the President of the United States. And I agree with Delegate Grist in thinking that we have to do something to bridge the gap. I also agree with the governor's staff that he has the responsibility to be thoughtful about our future obligations. But I don't see that we have a choice. At a minimum, we need to bridge the gap between today and when we have a longer term solution. Because even if we asked all of our nonprofits to fund and the community to help find, we wouldn't be able to logistically get food to all of the people that need it in the time frame they need it if we start even today. So I encourage the governor to find a way to temporarily or permanently, if necessary, bridge the gap to the federal government solution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And thanks for all the voices on this. I think we're in pretty much unanimity on this. Are there any other questions for the administration? Delegate McComas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I did not serve under Cass Taylor, but he was the one that pretty much instituted One Maryland. And I know that Speaker Bush always said that, we have to look at the whole. And I'm not going to blame the Trump administration. I'm not going to blame the Biden administration, although I have my own personal opinions of who's at fault. But I echo what Delegate Grice said. We have to take care of our Eastern Shore and our Western Maryland folks and everybody in between. And I do a lot of constituent work, and people are very, very, anyway, we're in a transition period in America. And I think that we don't need to cause any more worry and crisis for folks. So I just say I approve what Delegate Grice said, and I approve of what we're doing. And I'm a stickler. I'm a conservative Republican, but we just can't overburden people that have already had a hard time in life. So just wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Delegate McComas. Thanks for those words. Delegate McCaskill, if you have a question, please.
I do. I'm thinking from the lens of childcare providers. We often get a stipend from the Planning Council, right? The food program. And I know that I wanted to see if we can get any updates on where we are with that funding for our childcare community, for the Planning Council, for that food program, because I know as of November 1st, providers are not to expect any type of reimbursement.
I am not familiar with where that is at, Delegate McCaskill, but I will reach back out in the next 2 days and get you an answer.
I'd appreciate it. Thank
and
you.
That's Planning Council for Childcare
So-
Providers.
Yes, it's Planning Council. It's funded through the USDA. The community did receive notice maybe about a month ago to let us know that we will not be receiving reimbursement starting November 1st. I'm just wondering if this is
Okay.
part of the plan as well of what's happening with the shutdown.
If it's possible to forward me that email, delegate, that'll
sure.
help me. That'll help me run it down for you.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Forbes.
Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today and listening to us. I know it's of great concern to my colleagues and I. Our food banks, there have been a number of articles that our food banks and our food pantries are under duress. They are the nonprofits that are helping our federal workers who are furloughed and not getting paid. And to add this most vulnerable population, the people that already qualify for SNAP, to them and to their burden is unconscionable in my mind. So I hope that you will take that message back to the governor, and I hope that we can find a way to fund the SNAP benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Shetty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate the opportunity again to ask questions. And thank you, Mr. Baker and our new budget secretary for joining us today. I really appreciate the reference to the week by week approach. I think that's really smart given the evolving nature. It seems like every day there is some new thing being thrown at us. So I want to commend the governor and your team for taking that approach. This is the first public reference I've heard to that. Thus far, I've only seen kind of more of a month by month and a broader announcement being made that SNAP will not be, or excuse me, the rainy day fund would not be used. Is the governor reconsidering or open to reconsidering that announcement about the rainy day funds?
I think we're looking at every, and then I'll let you actually give the more technical answer, Mr. Secretary. I think we're looking at every pot of money. Chair Shetty, I think we're looking at every pot of money and every piece of the puzzle that's available to redeploy, towards our most vulnerable populations. And I think, certainly, we're gonna look under every couch cushion at every extra piece of funding that's got the ability to be used for other things. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle is what is eligible to be moved around to use.
Including or excluding the rainy day fund?
So, Delegate, I don't want to say for certain right now and lock the governor into any specific source of funds. Obviously, there are concerns with going into the rainy day fund specifically, right? Senator Young mentioned earlier about the bond rating agencies. So there are a variety of concerns, but as Mr. Baker said, we are looking at every available pot of money to figure out where the governor can best help Marylanders.
Okay, and I know you referenced earlier, Mr. Baker, that the administration is looking to neighboring states and what other states have done as well. And we appreciate that because I do think that there is strength in numbers approach here in that everybody is concerned about their state budget balance, and no state, as the governor has noted, has the balance sheet to in perpetuity carry these benefits. We recognize that here, both Democrats and Republicans. And so what I would say to that is I'm familiar with some states, putting in a lot of money into food banks, and our food banks are doing Herculean efforts right now to try and meet the extensive need that has resulted in part due to the federal workforce layoffs and furloughs that have occurred. Our county and our district in particular has really seen some of that in a very acute manner. What I would say, though, for consideration is food banks are not a perfect substitute to SNAP benefit reimbursement for a number of reasons. Food banks do their best to provide culturally, specific to a community foods that are able to be cooked and used by a number of communities. But they have a harder time accommodating people with special dietary restrictions. And SNAP dollars are really helpful in giving autonomy and dignity to individuals to be able to spend the money the way that they need to support their families in the most appropriate way that they can. So to the extent that we can look at ways to again, consider an all of the above approach. I know we don't have all of the resources. It's not an unlimited bucket, but even the week by week assessment that Governor Youngkin in Virginia is doing on reimbursing is worthy of consideration, given that we have a lower SNAP enrollment rate than they do. Just putting that out there for consideration, and really appreciate all that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback. And obviously, we're talking to a lot of providers of all kinds about capacity, and certainly recognize that, direct to folks, is the best option when available.
Yeah, and I'll just echo Chair Shetty in that the most effective way to get people fed is to transfer money, as our comptroller said, onto these cards. It gets them the money immediately and effectively so they can have autonomy and buy food. Food banks are a part. They do great work, but they are not a solution to the problem that's presented with SNAP here today. And so I hope that getting money onto these cards will be part of the solution that the governor comes up with in the next 24 hours. I do want to say this before we let you two go. I think everyone on these committees knows the values of our governor, and we certainly know the values of both of you. We know that it breaks your heart to think that any Marylander would go hungry. We know that it would break the governor's heart. We know that this is a priority for him. We have seen that over the 3 years of his administration. We can see the good work he's done in combating poverty already during this administration, and that's why we're so hopeful in the next 24 hours we're going to hear a solution that does keep Marylanders fed. With that, thanks to you both for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We are now going to turn to Michelle Medeo with Health Benefits and Equity Project, as well as Kendra James, who is a SNAP recipient. Welcome to you both. And Michelle, why don't you start? We'll do a traditional 2 minutes for witnesses for you, Michelle, but we'll give a little longer for Kendra to share her story.
Thank you, Chair Barnes and senators, delegates, members of the committees. Really, really appreciate that you're holding this briefing and the opportunity to testify. Michelle Medeo. I'm an attorney at the Public Justice Center. We're a non-for-profit civil rights, anti-poverty legal services organization. And one of the many services we provide is we provide free legal representation to people having a difficult time accessing SNAP benefits, and we partner with them in advocacy to expand access. Over the past week, we've been out on the streets in shelters hearing from our clients, and people are terrified. People are scared about what will happen just a few days from now if they don't receive the SNAP benefits. And this uncertainty is causing high levels of stress in communities that are already experiencing profound trauma and historic disinvestment. As you know, food insecurity is a social determinant of health. And when you're hungry, it has a ripple effect on all parts of your life, your identity, your ability to thrive. If a child is hungry, it impacts their ability to learn and focus in school. If a parent does not receive SNAP, she has to make the impossible decision of what bills to stop paying so she can purchase food. And when you don't pay rent or utilities, your energy shuts off, you get evicted. I spoke yesterday with a client who received SNAP who wanted to be here today. She has to wait in line at a food bank currently. Her daughter is allergic to dairy and nuts and on a special needs diet, similar to what Delegate Shetty was sharing. The food is extremely expensive, and so she tries to leave her house first thing in the morning to get in line at the food bank, to wait in the cold, wrapped around the corner of this line, hoping that when she gets inside, there might be something that her daughter can eat. Food pantries are extremely important, but they are not a replacement for SNAP. And as we've heard today, the federal government has failed the 1 in 9 Marylanders throughout our state who receive SNAP, but Maryland has a choice right now in how we respond, and we must do something. 59% of the families who receive SNAP have a child, 32% of families have a senior or a disabled member, and more than 39% are in families who are working jobs with wages too low to cover the cost of food. SNAP is a lifeline for all of these Marylanders, and we're looking to you, our leaders, to step in and help avoid the imminent and long-term harm that will come from households not receiving SNAP benefits in November. Thank you so much for listening and the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Thanks for your advocacy and thanks for being with us. Mr. Chairman, any questions on your side? Any questions for Michelle? Okay, let's hear from Kendra James. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, delegates and Senate. I thank you. I am a grateful recipient of SNAP. I live in what is known as the 4x4 in East Baltimore City. In the past year, I have watched the neighborhood CVS, Dollar General, and now my part-time job, which is where I am right now. At Food Depot, we learned yesterday that they will no longer be able to sustain. They are closing their doors. And before the first of the year, we will no longer have a job. I was only working 10 or 15 hours a week at $15 an hour. And that's all about to change drastically. Where our store used to be open 12 hours a day, we are now only going to be open for 8. Once we heard word of the government shutdown and how it affects the SNAP benefits, as you can see, the store that I am employed in at this very moment is eerily empty. Okay, most of these people, and I'm being honest, are not going to pay for the things in their bags or their buggies. They're going to steal. I've been watching the security here risk their lives over milk and eggs. And I'm just wondering, who is going to protect me, my 16-year-old daughter, and my 3-year-old grandson when it begins to rain fear and devastation in our homes and in our neighborhoods, when it begins to rain on the senior citizens that have special needs diets, or the mother with the autistic child that won't eat something that's not a certain color or a certain shape? What happens when it begins to pour rain down on home invasions and riots? Whose responsibility is it to protect us? I'm afraid. The people in my neighborhood are preparing for war. We feel betrayed, left out, and forgotten. Again, I'm a grateful recipient. As you can see, I'm at work and I still cannot cover my household bills or supplies without the help of SNAP. So if I don't get SNAP next month, I'm gonna have to forfeit Wi-Fi, maybe my phone, make more arrangements with BGE. I am also a Section 8 recipient, which means if any of my utilities get cut off, I'm homeless. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thanks for your courage and testimony today. We appreciate it. It's very helpful. Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for being off camera. I've been experiencing some instability with my internet. I want to thank Kendra for her testimony. She lives in the 45th district, not too far from me. I do have a question that maybe she might be able to answer. As you noted, the closure of Food Depot would put a lot of people in a tough situation, particularly if they're used to walking to getting their groceries. One of the is that we've enabled people to use SNAP benefits to get food delivery. It sounds like if there's no store nearby, using SNAP Online could be helpful, but if there is no SNAP, then SNAP Online doesn't matter at all. I didn't know if you could speak to that.
I can speak directly to that. I am also a person that uses the order, being able to order from Walmart, from Amazon, from whatever entity that accepts EBT, because I don't have transportation all the time. So Food Depot doesn't always carry the things that's needed at home. You understand what I'm saying? So being able to have that option is great. Also, when they close the doors of the Food Depot, right? This grocery store is within walking distance of a lot of people. There's a lot of people already scared. We still have 60 days, maybe. The nearest grocery store is Giants because Save-A-Lot is over here, but there's not very many things you can get from Save a Lot versus Food Depot, if you're familiar with the two stores. So I think the taking away SNAP benefits and with the neighborhood store closing, it's going to be a disaster in this area, a disaster. They already don't mind taking things that don't belong to them. Already, what's going to happen for those of us that have versus people that don't? What is this going to look like for our community? Safety-wise, what is it going to look like for the small businesses, for my corner store, for the bodegas, for the neighborhood? What is it going to look like? We don't know.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks again for your passion and being with us. Any other questions from Senator House? Kendra, thanks so much for being with us. Mr. Chairman, I've said enough. Why don't you close us out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you once again for pulling this together. There's been a lot of factual information that's been provided. There's been some clearly information about people's lives and what they're living with right now, what their expectations are provided. The simple answer to this is long-term, it's not a simple answer, but in the short term, we've got to do something. And I know that you and I and the entire legislature is ready to work with the administration. We have some solution before us. We need to continue to pursue that. We literally have a day or two before people are going to be without. And as I said from the very beginning, this isn't the America that I believe in, where things like this happen. We have a moral responsibility, and that solution, and I mean an effective solution, a real solution for people, real people, has got to be found, and it's got to be found quickly. And I know, as I said, we all stand ready to find that and work with the administration on that. Thank you.
Thanks for your leadership, Mr. Chair. We're adjourned.